I wanted to talk in this video about business structure specifically. Um, I've been giving a lot of thought to the structure of how businesses work, how workplaces generally operate. Um, and it seems strange to me, something that really popped out, both in my own experience and seeing the experiences of others, and just, I guess you could say, in the general feel of our culture, if that's a fair way of putting it. As a society, we, in this country, the United States, collectively value democratic principles. I remember being in elementary school and learning about the different branches of the U.S. government and the state governments, and we talked about something called democratic principles. I remember that word specifically. Democratic values, I think is the way they put it. Same thing. And the emphasis was things like the basic principle that we collectively value is that everyone in a society has a say in how that society works. Everyone has a particular civil value that that we inherently have. We don't earn it. It's not a gift that's bestowed unless maybe you believe that it's from your creator or God. But it's what we call rights. You have the right to a lawyer. You have the right to be represented. You have the right to vote. Things like this. Very, very basic things which in our day and age and in the past 200 years or so, since the Enlightenment, we've taken for granted these sort of democratic values that we collectively value. But I was thinking about it in terms of business and business structure. And I was thinking about it in my own experience, like I said, but what's going on here? Not just going in, clocking in, doing your shift, getting paid. But I was thinking about the actual function of the workplace, the management, the structure, the hierarchy. What's going on with this? And the more I reflected on this, the more I came to the realization that, for the most part, overwhelmingly, the majority, business, I guess culture, doesn't value democratic principles, democratic values in the way that generally society does. And that's so interesting to me. So I became fixated on that. Why is it that we live in a civilization, a structure of government, where things like freedom of speech, the right to vote, freedom of the press, things like this, that we take for granted because they're almost spiritual values. Of course, everyone has the right to vote. Why is it that that's so collectively valued, except in the one thing that most of us spend most of our lives doing, which is working? A lot of times businesses operate like little monarchies, like little autocracies. Business is autocratic in a big way. And I don't mean to say that every business is this way, or that there aren't businesses which are structurally autocratic, but are benevolent and do well for people and are good. But really the point is that arbitrary element, that really if you own a business, it's yours. You're responsible for it. You could piss on the wall of your office building if you own it. Ownership is everything. Now, there are mechanisms that have developed over the years, obviously, labor regulations as far as government, unions, things like this. But when it really boils down to it, in our workplace, we're still very much dictatorial. And that's so weird. That's almost grossly fascinating to me that there can be owners who, on a whim, can fire and hire, can sort of manipulate and play with the very source of a lot of people's livelihoods very directly. In this direct power over most of our lives, the vast majority of people, working people, this direct power is in the hands of some guy or some woman, some person who it seems too willy-nilly. I don't know another way of putting it. It seems too loose. It seems too arbitrary. There's not a lot in places, at least that I've seen and have worked for personally. There aren't a lot of mechanisms or fail-safes to guard against abuses of power like that on a microcosmic level. So you have this democratic society overall where we value voting, free speech, free expression, but these microcosms of dictatorships where the owner is simply the owner, and that gives them license to really, in many cases that I've both seen and experienced, gives them license to abuse, license to, on a whim, make decisions that are bad. So that's really been a mystery to me. Why is it that there aren't in business structures included in what might be called fail safes? When you have a machine and you're operating the machine, and there's a potential that if that machine, say like a sod cutter, were to go awry, something went wrong, the engine started burning up and there was smoke, you lost control of it, there's a switch that's a fail switch on the machine where you easily accessed, where you hit it and the machine shuts down. It literally is built in and engineered into this machine to cut off power in an emergency state. If that machine were the structure of business, there's no fail-safe. There's no kill switch for the most part. If you have a malevolent or malicious owner, a personality that is incooperative, that is even abusive, but they own your workplace, they own the workplace, and they basically own the livelihood of those who work under them. Nothing is to stop them. Now, the theory is, at least in the capitalistic sense, well, not only is there labor regulations by the government itself, but the theory and what's sort of laid on this, I feel like, okay, I'm going to really try to illustrate this point. The theory goes that the free market, meaning the demands that are out there for your labor as the laborer, works in theory to moderate that abuse of power. For example, if you feel that your rights are not being properly observed, if you're some way or another dissatisfied with your workplace, what the capitalist would tell you, we'll find another one, because there's a lot of available places to put the value of your labor. But in practice, it's quite different. It's too circumstantial. Many people are not in the position for whatever reason, for a million different reasons, to simply relocate their labor on a whim. The balance, in other words, the scales of balance between the laborer and owner or manager of a business is still, in this day and age, very feudal. It's come a long way from the days of those old steam-powered shops and factories where literally children would work 16-hour shifts until they drop. It's come a long way with the advent of labor unions, strikes, all that stuff. But it is still disproportionately, I feel, unfair. And to be frank, I mean, it's not just unfair, but it's super counterproductive. One of the most valuable assets an employee or a laborer can offer a collective cause like a company, one of the most valuable things they can offer is individual creativity, individual expression of their own personal value. And a lot of times that pressure to remain employed, you have a family to feed, you have food to get, that pressure to remain employed gives the management and the ownership of your employer immense amounts of power. They're entirely disproportionate and extremely autocratic. What I want to do, and what I hope, I don't hope, what I'm going to do is to, within the extent of my ability, I want to design a structure of business that is based not on personality, but on principle. And I want to emulate the principle that lies at the core of our way of life, which is to say that allowing individuals to contribute creatively, allowing individuals to feel free is the best way to foster a workplace of productivity and ultimately profitability. Labor by the compulsion of circumstance, I am convinced, is incomparable with labor which comes from the feeling of being free.